send me the link. Hello, good evening, everyone. We are with Red Celt, and we are going to do two things tonight. One of them is to discuss the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the other one is we're going to do a small fundraiser for Red. Red is a, can I say, sick old man who's poor and lonely, but seriously, he had a dog for many years that he loved, and the dog unfortunately died, and now Red is asking for funds to get a new puppy, and he doesn't ask for much. We only need to raise something like all that's left is 400 pounds, I guess, something around.
Yes.
About. And I'm going to put the link to his fundraiser. Red, put the link of the fundraiser in the chat, and I'll put it in the description box. Go there. I donated today 10 pounds. Just if you feel like it, go and give a few shekels to Red. This is just for, he's not going to buy an exotic puppy, he's just going to need money for the vet and expenses and such. So, but let's go and talk about the main thing, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a little bit the Middle East politics. And we can see from there. Wait, I'm just going to copy and paste the link. Just a sec.
I'm just wondering how many friends or enemies I'm going to make by what I've got to say and how charitable they'll be after they hear me talking.
Well, you already got 215 pounds, which is very nice. And we're not very far away. If I'm going to put actually the link to this hangout later on the description box to let people join in, and let's see if we can raise all the money that we need. But Red, can you wanted to talk to me about the situation in the Middle East a while ago? So anything on your mind that you wanted to say?
There's nothing that's happened recently which, well, apart from the whole ISIS thing, but nothing specifically to do with Israel, which has caught my attention now.
Okay.
It's just the general ongoing situation rather than a specific event, basically.
Well, this is a good topic. We're not going to talk current events. Let's talk about a little bit history, maybe, or stuff like that. And the reason that I wanted to do this discussion is because I got a comment, and I get comments from time to time about who owns the land, who owns what, which is basically a silly question as far as I'm concerned when you want to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And a lot of people raise that point. Who owns what? This is a big discussion. This is a huge discussion.
But didn't we already establish that we basically agree with each other on this, and that the ownership of land is a bit of a silly concept anyway?
Yes, but let's discuss it for a second, because I got someone linked me a video of Jimmy Carter saying Palestine is for the Palestinians. So I want you to defend that position for a second, if you can, as best as you can. So what defines a Palestinian? That's a good question to start with.
What, just the name?
What defines the Palestinians? You want to give land to the Palestinians? Who are the Palestinians?
It's not a case of giving land to the Palestinians. It's stop taking land away from the Palestinians, which is the main problem going on.
Yeah, but who are we taking it from? Who are the Palestinians? What defines a Palestinian? That's a good question, I guess.
Somebody who isn't Jewish and living in the area that was once called Transjordan. Or
why isn't he Jewish?
Well, you're the one that should be answering that question, surely.
No, I'm asking you because you're going to be the counter argument for me. This is what Jimmy Carter said. Jimmy Carter said Palestine is for Palestinians. So I want to understand who are the Palestinians. What defines a Palestinian? And let's go back in history.
Well, I would say the non-Israelis living in that area.
Very good. Okay, non-Israelis. So let's take the year 1910. Okay, and in 1910 there was no Israel.
No.
In that point in time, who were the Palestinians? The people who lived in the area called Palestine, right?
I'd have said everyone living there.
The ones living in the area called Palestine, in the region called Palestine, because it's not a state or a country.
Yes.
It's a region, and you have people who live there, and the region is called Palestine. And from that, you say the people who live there are Palestinians. Now, here's a question, and I really want you to put me to the challenge here, seriously. And people in the comment section, you know what? People in the comment section, I'm going to look at your comments and see, you know what? I'm going to, if someone wants to join this conversation, I'm going to leave the description, in the description box, the link to this conversation. And
in case I'm not antagonistic enough, is that it?
Yeah, you're not antagonistic. I need someone to challenge me. I thought you'll do a better job.
Oh, I will. You just haven't got there yet.
Okay. Fair enough. So 1910, yeah. We have people living here called Palestinians. Are they necessarily Arabs?
No.
No, there are many ethnic groups here in Palestine. You have the Druze, the Bedouins, which are not Arabs, by the way, not all of them. Like you have in Syria, Alawites, Circassians, I don't know how exactly to say, Circassians, maybe. And many, many tribes, indigenous tribes to the area. But let's say this, let's say, I'm just asking, Jews that lived in Palestine pre-Israel, aren't they Palestinians?
Yes.
So
they couldn't be called Israelis because Israel didn't exist. So they would, by definition,
but can you call them Palestinians?
Yeah.
And then you'll say, okay, they got to Palestine in the early 20th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. But the fact is that many Arabs that came to this area, which today we are calling them Palestinians, immigrated from Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. Many of them came from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon in the late 19th century, in the early 20th century, same as Jews.
Yeah, so there was a population boom for Palestinians, well, Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah, there was a majority of Arabs in the area in that time period. But what happened is that you got Arabs coming from all around, Egyptians. They are not Palestinians, they're Egyptians. They immigrate to this area. They buy land, or just, the area was like a no man's land. It was under the Ottoman Empire and later under the British Mandate. So there was no state, like a sovereign state holding this area and claiming to own this land.
No.
Okay, so you're not much of a counterpoint argument, but I'm going to keep on rambling until someone.
No, sorry, but I agree. Nothing that you've said is wrong so far.
Okay, so
But I would point out that as well as all of these sort of Arabs and other non-Jews moving en masse to the area, where are all the Israelis coming from? How many generations can you count back Israelis in your family?
Well, that's the point. The Israel it was just a rename. It's like doing pressing an F2 on an area and saying it's not called Palestine right now, it's called Israel.
I'm not talking about the name here. How many generations can you trace back to that area?
Of Jews?
Yes.
Yeah, you can trace a lot, but they would be a minority, still be a very small minority.
Beyond your grandparents, maybe great-grandparents, nearly everyone currently in Israel came from somewhere else.
No,
there was there was a small Jewish population.
Okay. There was a mass immigration. There was a small Jewish population, indigenous population. Again, a minority.
Yes.
But then you got huge waves of immigration during the early 20th century.
Yeah, of every religion and ethnicity.
Yeah, exactly. So you got a lot of Jews coming into the area, a lot of Arabs coming into the area, and there were more Arabs to begin with.
Okay.
Okay. So, but until 1948, when the establishment of the State of Israel, everyone in the area were called Palestinians, were considered to be Palestinians. Even now the big majority of Jews, not majority, but there's big amount, a lot of Jews, 500,000 Jews. I can't remember the exact number, maybe 1 million Jews. They were all now should be considered Palestinians, same as that. All the descendants of the Palestinians that today that came from Egypt and Saudi at the early 20th century, we consider them today Palestinians. We are saying, let's give them back the land, it's theirs. They came here in the early 20th century. Okay, so my point is, you have a lot of Jews coming into Palestine, buying land, taking over land, but not by force or by war, but just taking over land. And one day they just decide to change the name of a sub area inside the area which is called Palestine. And of course, this is completely legal with the UN resolution.
Okay.
And form the State of Israel. So, and this is the funny thing here, because then you say, okay, the UN decided to give half of the area to Jews and half of the area to Arabs, and they would be considered Palestinians. And this is the problematic thing. This is probably the main issue here. Arabs were not considered Palestinians before 1948. They were considered Arabs under Ottoman Empire or under the British Mandate. The term Palestinians came later to delineate between the Jews of Israel and the Arabs of Palestine.
Okay.
And this is what creates the big confusion here. But everyone, you can say that many people were immigrating into this area, buying land, and everyone has the same claim, at least on some of the at parts of the area, right? Where they
yeah, but you talk about individual landowners and purchasers, aren't you? But what about when it comes to a state?
Okay, there was no state before 1948. So everyone pre that year, before that year, were just buying real estate. No one could say, this is my state, this is my state. There were no states.
Okay, I think what people like myself have problems with is not what happened then, is what happened afterwards and what's still going on, which is settlement building.
Oh, with that, I don't have an argument with you, because
oh, great.
I don't I don't approve of settlements, and not because of just because of moral issues, but also from a strategic point of view. I think it's silly to do that for the State of Israel. But if we are opening the subject, then let's discuss it for a second. I think that what happened is, after 1948, the UN decided, the UN was the authority here in this area. They, quote unquote, owned the land here, because they were the ones who could have decided who gets what, right?
Yeah, I mean, my history is not perfect around this area. I mean, was it the League of Nations originally which said, here, Britain, you've got land in that general area, do you look after Transjordan at the same time?
Right, but before that, it's very simple. It was the Ottoman Empire that ruled here for many centuries, right? And before that, the Arab conquest, and before that, a whole sorts of tribes, like the Romans, the Persians, the Greek, etc., etc. But that's ancient history. So until 1917, the Ottoman Empire owned this land, not the Arabs. The Arabs may have owned particular land, like real estate, but it wasn't their state. It was the Ottoman Empire. They were defeated and thrown away from this area by the UN after World War I.
Okay, yeah.
And then the UN gave the British a mandate to rule this place until they decide what to do with it. And the British, what they did, they started carving the entire Middle East together with French, because all the Middle East and North Africa were given to the French and to the British government to handle. So what they did, they just sat down and took the map and a ruler and a pencil and start carving areas. That's what they did.
I know it is. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
That's why all the borders are so look so, straight,
yeah.
like straight lines.
Like the Romans have been there and done it instead.
And it's funny because I listened to a debate with about ISIS and George Galloway on Oxford Union, and he said, "Oh my God, like I fucking hate George Galloway, by the way.
So do I.
That's such a hypocrite." But he said that it's terrible what the world is doing now in Iraq, splitting Iraq. It's the US's fault for now Iraq crumbling into sub-states or sub-areas, sub-regions. And he forgot to mention that Iraq was an artificial invention in the first place.
Yes, it was, which is what led to the Kuwait, the Gulf War, the original Gulf War.
And and that's the reason it broke so quickly. Once you remove the totalitarian regime that held it together by the point of a gun. And so this is what happened in the Middle East. They just carved states, and they said, this is for the Hashemites, the Kingdom of Jordan. This is for the Alawites, Syria. This is for them, the Christians in Lebanon. This is for them. This is for the Bedouins in Libya. This is for the Kurds and the Sunnis and the Shiites in Iraq, etc., etc. And they decided,
sorry, but the Kurds didn't get a good deal out of that one.
No. They got fucked up. So. Yeah, they thought they could join them together with the Sunnis and the Shiites under Iraq, but it didn't work, really. But in any case, they were the ruling body in this area. If someone actually ruled and owned this place, it was the UN and the British mandate. And they decided to carve this piece of region called Palestine into two areas, one for the Arabs that lived in this area and one for the Jews that lived in this area. And at that point of time, this is something that was very a common thing to do. It was it wasn't so uncommon. There were a lot of forced immigrations of big populations from one area to another during the Second World War.
When they were doing all this, there was hostilities going on at the time. They didn't just do it arbitrarily, did they? I mean, there were some Jewish and Muslim, let's call them conflagrations going on at the time, due to the increased migration of Jews to the area.
Well, the migration of Jews to the area started to heat up the place.
Before like World War II, you'd see pictures of like Jerusalem, and you'd see Arabs sat next to Jews, sat next to Christians, and they're all neighbours. And individuals might fall out with each other, but there was no religious animosity as such. They were living cheek by jowl and getting on with each other pretty good.
There was always some sort of religious animosity, but at those times it was not so rampant.
No.
The thing is that once Jews came into the area and started buying lands from Arabs, the leader of the Arabs in this area, the Grand Mufti, started fighting against it, sanctioning Arabs that sell land to Jews, and this happened a lot. And in 1928, it was called the Arab Revolt, not the Palestinian Revolt, by the way, the Arab Revolt. That's the name because they were not considered Palestinians back then. And they revolted against the British mandate and started massacring Jews. Many, many of them. So the area, that's when you can say the conflict began to take shape between Jews and Arabs in the area. But I want to go back to the point that, so the area was owned by the US, and the US decided to split the area into two states. However, the Arabs of Palestine said no. They refused the offer. And from that point on, people ascribe this area to the local Arabs because they think, well, the UN wanted to give it to them, they didn't accept at that point in time. They didn't accept the state. They wanted all the land, and they went into war and lost. So if someone offers something to you and you reject it, wouldn't it make sense that you'll say, well, it's not yours anyway, so it's not yours now.
Yeah. There's one thing I have to, which comes up time and time again when I hit conversations about Israel Palestine, is just because the political leader of the time rejected it, it doesn't mean to say that the whole population should suffer the results of one shitty political leader.
That's
the thing with Arafat. I mean, people kept on saying, well, Arafat turned down such and such. I think, well, does that mean that the whole of the population of that area have to suffer because of Arafat?
And again, twice with Abu Mazen, with Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah.
That's a good question. They voted for them. They selected them as their leaders. And
sorry to do a Godwin, but the Germans did vote in Hitler as well. I mean, should you judge the whole country because they made a mistake?
Well, the German people paid for what Hitler did.
Yes, they did. Yes.
And then they replaced and got a new leader. And then they decided they're going to go another way. And then they got, another deal because they went another way. They went into the way of peace. And there were consequences for that. But the Palestinians had many chances. And by the way, I have a tape of Mahmoud Abbas on YouTube saying that refusing, ironically, refusing to take the UN offer in '48 was a mistake. He said that while at the same time he refused to offer very generous offers that he wouldn't be able to get nowadays from a right-wing government like Netanyahu. But not a few short years ago, he received 2 offers. I think just a second. Yeah, just one of them. One of them was rejected by Arafat. Sorry, one of them was rejected by Arafat. One was rejected by Mahmoud Abbas. And they were after to receive something around 100% of the occupied territories while exchanging lands, which means that if you cannot evacuate a huge city, a metropolitan, from the border between Israel and the West Bank, you give some area in exchange to that. He refused that offer. And then he said it was a mistake of refusing the offer the UN gave them, because that was a much better offer. And the thing is that once they refuse it again and again and again, you cannot still say, well, you own this land just because you live here. That is my point. It's not automatically theirs. That's what I'm trying to say, just because they live there. The bodies that control that area, which was the Ottoman Empire, the British Mandate. After the British Mandate was removed from the area, immediately Jordan annexed the West Bank and Egypt annexed the Gaza Strip. So they didn't even then control the area. In fact, until Israel and the PLO started the peace agreement in the 90s, and Israel handed over areas to the Palestinian Authority, that was the very first time that you can say that some kind of a government, a Palestinian or an Arab Palestinian government, began to say, well, this is ours, we accept this and this land.
Okay.
That's my point, if you want to.
Well, I mean, my issue with Israel is much more to do with how Israel treats Palestinians. And rather than what you seem to be concentrating on just now is the word Palestinian and who it should apply to, and does that mean that land can or cannot be Palestinian? And that's just a matter of words, definition of words to me. I mean, okay, and I understand exactly what you mean, but if you agree with me about the whole settlement problem, then that's that's just the bulk of what Jimmy Carter was trying to say, that the whole of the West Bank is dotted and riddled with Israeli settlements, linked together with roads that Palestinians aren't allowed to drive on.
For a reason. It's not arbitrary. People think that we just love to do that. We just love to, put Palestinians behind checkpoints and build up walls and, send army scouts into the West Bank, by the way, which is coordinated with the Palestinian Authority. Because one thing that the Israeli patrols are doing is making sure that Hamas will not take over the West Bank, same as they did in the Gaza Strip. So that's why the huge coordination between the Palestinian authorities. They don't have an army; they have like a police force, and the Israeli army.
Now, I understand that. It's just that's what Jimmy Carter was talking about. When he was talking about land ownership, he's on about the illegal settlements.
Okay, so let me now take the devil's advocate point side. Okay.
Okay.
I'll advocate for the settlements, although I think Israel, for strategic reasons, should not build settlements and should remove as many settlements from the area as possible. And the reason I think that is because I think on the long run, it is better. We will probably have to settle for something, and to do that, that would be the minimal damage to Israel if Israel would be less and less in the area. But that's it.
So more like a two-state solution.
Yeah, I'm for the two-state solution. The problem is I don't think right now we are able to go there, and I'll explain in a minute why. But what I'm going to take the devil's advocate for this, and I'm not going to argue the religious argument because that's too far away for me to be the devil's advocate. I'm going to argue from a non-religion standpoint.
Okay, I should point out that we're both atheists here, so it's difficult to take the religious standpoint from either of us.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to argue like this. All the area in the West Bank, and it's not specifically maybe even my true position here, my own position, but all the land, which is the West Bank right now, is a land under dispute, which means it's not really owned by anyone. It's open for the taking.
Not according to the UN and the rest of the world, but according to Israel and the USA, okay. Yes.
And why the UN is saying that? The UN is saying that because now the UN is controlled by two sides which push that agenda a lot. You need to understand that the UN, in the times in the last century, at the times they formed Israel, was comprised mostly or mainly out of a few European and North American countries, and Australia probably, I don't know. But it was like America, Canada, a few countries from Europe, and probably a country or two from South America, Argentina, etc. And now many African, Muslim, and Middle Eastern and Far East countries are in the UN. And so they now are much more in favor of Palestinians rather than Israelis, because
do you honestly believe that every non-Muslim country is on Israel's side?
No, and that which brings me to the other thing. The Western countries became more and more left-wing since Second World War.
You see this as a left-right issue?
Of course I do. In Israel, we consider left and right also a political thing. Left is usually tending to be more, settling, going the peaceful way. I would go even to say that it's more like progressive liberals. The more left you go, and they tend to be more like, let's be all friends, let's not fight. If we and look at what happens in Europe today. Europe is bringing in, I don't know if it's still doing that, but it's bringing in millions of immigrants and saying, let's open the doors, let's all be friends. And they're not, like Prager said, they do what feels good, not what actually is good.
Yeah, but they bring in refugees, and migrants are coming along for the ride, but they're not the ones that are welcome. It's the refugees that Europe is actually opening a door for. I think it's disingenuous and dismissive of a lot of people fleeing from horrible situations just to call them migrants.
No, they're not accepting refugees. If they wanted just to accept refugees, they would screen people coming in and saying, okay, you're from Syria, you're from Halab or from Tikrit. Okay, you're a refugee, you can come in. They're bringing in people from North Africa, from Pakistan. They know these people are Pakistani, but they're opening the doors. It's been like this for decades now.
Yeah, but that's the border countries like Greece who just want to get rid of everyone as quickly as possible. They don't care. They're not screening them. They're just passing them through to the next country along so they can worry about it.
Yeah, but if you're allowing this to happen, then you're accepting everyone. You're not accepting just refugees. And I think that's deliberate, if you ask me. I don't think that, and that this has been going on not just now, have been going on in the last few decades, couple of decades. So I think this is policy. Multiculturalism is a policy, a long-term policy.
Yeah, it's just you're portraying countries in the United Nations which are against Israel as just leftists and
not against Israel. But now I think what happens is that it became more and more progressive left, and the world became, the Western world became more and more progressive left. If you think about it, they're thinking in terms of all-inclusive, and the victim is always the underdog. The victim is never a perpetrator. The Palestinians are only victims. They are not perpetrating anything bad themselves because they are the victims. If you're going to say, well, you know, the Palestinians didn't get a land because of their own decisions and doing, then you're blaming the victim. And I hear even Israeli politicians, senior Israeli politicians from the progressive left, saying that you're blaming the victim if you're saying Palestinians are accountable for what happened to them. So this is a narrative that comes from the left and the far left.
No, if a baby boy is born in Gaza City tonight, is he responsible for what his ancestors or parents or grandparents did?
No, but what is your point?
It's just, well, the situation you're in, it's not to do with, I don't know, victim blaming. You can't really blame an infant who's just been born for the situation he's in.
But you can blame in general, the Palestinian people and their leaders. And if many Palestinians partake in terrorism, and in
yeah, we both know that terrorism and is another name for freedom fighter. It depends on whose perspective you're looking at.
Exactly, but there's a very, very distinct definition of terrorism. The goal of a terrorist organization is to control by seeding fear and hate in civilians, and violently attacking them. Right?
You just described the state of Israel. I hope you realize that.
No, because that's not the goal of the state of Israel.
Oh, it's the goal. Ends justify the means, sort of thing.
Exactly. That's a huge. People they are cynical and saying, yeah, but they think that like Israel, if so, the Israeli government is saying, you know what? Let's just go and bomb Arabs for fun. Let's seed fear in them. That's our goal. We want to take over the land. Let's just bomb the shit out of them and scare them. And they think that's the mindset of the Israeli government. Of all Israeli governments, we had left-wing Israeli governments. Every 2-3 years for the last 30 years, the government changed from right-wing, left-wing, center, right-wing, left-wing, center. Right? It was right-wing until 92. Then you got a very left-wing government. Then you got a right-wing government. That was Netanyahu first time. Then you got back the left-wing government, the Labour Party. And then you got centralist right. Then you got centralist left. Then you got right again.
And the
all of
right.
them,
Are we back to Ariel Sharon at that point, or was he
Ariel Sharon at that point was center right.
center?
Seriously, seriously, if you look at the Israeli spectrum, he began from a very far right position, but he's the one who came up with the plan to evacuate all the Israeli settlements from Gaza. He is not as right wing as you'd think. And he, at the last of his days, he even said we are not supposed to occupy the West Bank when he was a prime minister. So the more as he became very old, he became more a centralist. When he was young, he was much more right wing. But that's a specific prime minister. If you look after that, Olmert was a centralist, and he offered the Palestinians 100% of the land back. They refused. He even started talking with Assad about giving back the Golan Heights and, having peace with Syria at that time. And if you look, who made the peace agreement with? This is a funny thing. Who made the peace agreement with Egypt? You know who did? A very right-wing government. And it was a left-wing government who took the Sinai from the Egyptians in the 67 war, built settlements in Sinai, and then you got a right-wing party coming into power saying we're not going to move a single inch from Sinai. And then the very same man that said that signed a peace agreement with the Egyptians, gave them the Sinai Peninsula, which is larger than the entire state of Israel, by the way, and removed all the settlements from that area. So when it comes to the interests of Israel, Israel is very much it wants to give back land if it can get peace. And we have many times we did that in the past. We did it with Egypt, and we did that when what is called now Area A, where the Palestinian Authority is ruling, Gaza, Nablus, and many other cities in the West Bank. And we offered the Palestinians to retreat from the entire West Bank, and we unilaterally retreated from Gaza and removed all the settlements from there. So if you give us we don't care about land. If you think about it, there were enough examples for that. If we can get what we want, and what we want is peace. Because if you're looking at the Israeli people, if we are now discussing the Israeli people, okay, and not jobs that are religious fanatics that climb hills in Sumeria, and right in the West Bank, and I'm not talking about them, and they're a very small minority. Israelis just want to have a good life. They want to get a good job, earn a lot of money, spend a lot of money, have kids, have them go to good schools, get a good job later, marry, have their own kids, etc., etc. That's what.
Okay, but that's just what every Palestinian wants as well, surely, if they're able to. But I think the problem is that many parts of where they live, they can't do that. They can't do any of those things.
That's what I thought 20 years ago. I truly believed, and back then I voted for a very left-wing party in Israel, probably the most left-wing, which is not an Arab party, because we have Arab parties here in Israel. So I voted for them, and I was under the impression that Palestinians are poor, they're miserable, and they are frustrated. And if we'll give them a chance for a better life, we'll give them, infrastructure and money and an ability to have a good life, they wouldn't want to fight against Israel. Yes, I did vote for Meretz, but that was someone wrote in the comment section and called me a ugly leftist. Okay, the guy with the Borat avatar.
So I'm definitely a leftist anyway, so don't worry.
No, okay. So my point is, I thought that if we'll give them all that good crap, they'll calm down. And we started doing that. We in '92 we voted in a left-wing government, and we started retreating from another city and another city, and there was a peace process. We wrote, we wrote. He's making me laugh. The guy in the comment section. We had a peace agreement, and it all went well for many years. But during that time, we suffered a lot of terrorist attacks. But we didn't say quit. I thought that, well, some radical groups within the Palestinians called Hamas are trying to stop us from having the peace process, to unravel it, and we're not going to surrender to that kind of terror. So a bus after bus after bus exploded in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem while we were discussing peace, while we were giving back land to the Palestinians. And eventually, what happened was that they didn't intend, at least their government, didn't really intended to finalize the agreement to have peace, to stop the hostilities, and to have two-state solution. And it took me, after that point, after the second intifada, it still took me many years to realize, for the cognitive dissonance to pass, and realize that they are strategically don't want to have a two-state solution. I don't think the government or many of the Palestinians don't want that. Enough that they would be the ones who would set the tone. Because even if there are half of the Palestinians right now in the West Bank that want a two-state solution, they don't matter at all, because they are not in a position of power to do anything. The only people in position of power in the Palestinians are the Palestinian groups, and there are dozens of them. The Islamic Jihad 1, the Islamic Jihad 2, the Azadin al-Qassam brigades, the blah blah blah,
and in the meantime, all of the Palestinian secularists have to suffer from all this bullshit.
Yeah, but there are very few of those secularists, if you want to talk about that. Almost all of them are religious. There are no atheists over there. Probably be killed if you're going to say you're an atheist. But that's a different thing. So the problem is that the Palestinian Authority, and if you look at all the facts, if you go and dive into it, watch MEMRI on YouTube, watch PalWatch on YouTube, you'll find that all the Palestinians are doing is just telling their children in schools, in the academia, in the news, on television, on radio, everywhere, in every format, we are going to take all of the land back. It's only a matter of time.
Yes, I think if you spend too much time with a boot stamped on your face, you're not going to be all that interested in hearing what the other side has got to say.
Well, I don't care about that. I don't care about that.
If you or I, or anyone in the chat was born in Gaza, they would be a supporter of or a member of Hamas, unless they're fond of curling up into a fetal position and just repeatedly being kicked in the face by the state of Israel.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
I don't agree that there's only one way that the Palestinians could react to the situation, and I'll give you my reasoning. They are choosing terror. They have been choosing terror as a means of getting what they want, and what they want is the entire area of Palestine, the previous Palestine, which means the entire area of Israel. And they do it for cultural and religious reasons. And the reason I'm saying that is, people say Palestinians are going to terrorism, whether it's organized or unorganized, because they are frustrated. They are poor and miserable. Well, then I'll say, and the occupation, like you said, they getting boots on their neck. Then I'll say, what's the excuse of the Muslims and the jihadists in Paris and in Brussels? What's their excuse? What's the excuse of the jihadists and
the entire
Middle East?
You're comparing apples to oranges. Of course, there are religious lunatics living amongst the Palestinians, just like with every other part of the Islamic world. But
only the Palestinians are lunatics. If you're looking at Gaza, 80% of them, or 50% or 70% of them, are supporting Hamas. And what Hamas is doing is why?
What's the alternative?
Rise against that, but they won't, because they have the same mindset.
If I was born there, the ones I'd be rising up against is Israel. It wouldn't be Hamas.
No, man. But you wouldn't be born there with the mindset of a British person. You would be born there with the mindset of someone from a Muslim culture.
No, yeah, but even as a British person living in a place that in 2008, 2012, and 2014 got absolutely decimated and turned into a rubble heap, I think I would be pretty pissed off at the state of Israel by then.
But that was in the late 2000s. What happened during the 90s?
Gaza I thought we were talking about how do we go forward?
But this is my point. But this is exactly my point. Gaza was an open place. People just went in and out of Gaza without any checkpoints during the 90s. I could have just taken my car, drive to Gaza, go shopping somewhere, get a few people to come to, like a handyman to bring back home to fix some stuff for me.
pick up a cheap Palestinian to do your garden work.
Well, they would welcome it. Yes, and that's not a bad thing if you think about it.
And you wonder why Jimmy Carter was on about an apartheid state.
No, they want. Why? Oh, okay, forget about that part. We'll talk about apartheid later. But they wanted to come in to work, and they were more cheap labor, right? But that's how that you get from getting poor to getting rich. Did you listen to that Milton Friedman lecture, where he talked about the actually he talked about the Equal Pay Act and how ridiculous it is, how harmful it is for women? Because he said that what works is that when you are able to compete by lowering your prices, that's how you establish yourself. You get experience, you are putting your foot in the door, and then from that slowly you're going up, and the generation that comes after you, your children, will be in a better shape, and after 2-3 generations of that, that's how America became America today. Poor immigrants came in, they worked hard, they worked for less than the natives. That's how they succeeded. That's how they became the middle class. That's the right way to do that. So Gaza was a very, very touristic, open, non-violent place in the 90s, during the time that Israel and the Palestinians had the peace process. And this lasted for years. And the violent Second Intifada started in the year 2001. 7 years after the peace talks started. And Israelis went to the West Bank and to shops, and they were kind of a tourists over there. There was even a casino in Jericho, and Israelis went to Jericho and spent a lot of money there. So everything looked good. So what is the excuse? Why did they regress back to violence? And the Second Intifada was extremely violent. I think thousands of Israelis died in a very short period. Exploding buses, exploding restaurants, exploding discotheques with children. And I'm saying children, I mean 18-year-old kids. What is the excuse? What is the excuse? There is no excuse. That's because of a cultural reason. That's not because they were feeling...
but all the number of children that are killed in Gaza by Israeli after it, it's just...
No, don't mix. That's later. It's not before. No.
Yeah, I know it comes later. But
yeah, that comes
like, oh, they're the bad guys or the good guys, but no, they're just everyone is bad.
No, I'm saying that the problem is cultural. I'm saying that Muslims, the culture of Muslim people from the Middle East especially, is a very violent culture that resolves everything with conflict. And it's not like a mindset of a modern European.
Yeah, but even that is relatively new.
No, that was never new. That was from the get-go, from Muhammad. The reason they took over the entire Middle East, North Africa, and got into Spain and were stopped by the Galleons, today the French, is because they were very, very ruthless. Extremely ruthless. And everything you see today in ISIS is a shining example of what happened there 1,500 years ago.
You try to tell me that the Western civilization hasn't been ruthless.
It was extremely ruthless, but then it came.
So
then you got a big revolution, right? From going from the Middle Ages, which controlled by the church, being extremely ruthless, the Spanish Inquisition, the church, all the pogroms, all the crusades and all that, and what happened during the crusades. But then you got the revolution of the secular revolution in Europe. Seculars came up, the church came down.
I wish it's still happening.
No. The Catholic Church ruled. Oh, my kids came home. The Catholic Church ruled the area. That's why it was like that. But then you have the Reformation of Christianity became more secular, and then you got secularists and philosophers taking over. Countries becoming more and more democratic, more and more humanitarian, more and more Western, as we know them today.
It took us a long time to get there. A lot of blood was spilled along the way.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that every culture has that potential to do that. And I don't think you can take now 1.7 billion Muslims and completely reform that group. It was a good thing that it happened in Europe in a very confined space, by the way, where countries kind of, you have the French who did the French Revolution, took over the entire half of Europe and reforming most of Europe. And the same goes with Britain. You have two empires that secularized the area, right? And brought it to become...
yes, secularism wasn't quite as strong there as you seem to think. It's only
but it was a process that brought us to where we are today.
Yeah, but it's only in relatively recent years I can out myself as an atheist and not worry about consequences. I mean, the secularization has been a very slow process, and it's only really it's still peaking. It's not with us completely yet. We're getting there, but it's not as if the West has been a sort of secular, religious-free zone, and Islam is obviously Islam is nowhere near that.
I don't think Islam could be. It's too big and scattered for it to be. Even if you completely secularize the entire African continent, all the Muslim, and they have like Boko Haram over there and a lot of crazy Muslims over there. But even if you manage to do that, secularize the entire and modernize the entire Muslim culture in North Africa, you still have the Middle East, you still have ISIS, and they're like hundreds of millions of people over there. It's like the state of America.
Yeah, but then you can point at Muslims in Indonesia who are nothing like their Arab counterparts, but they're still Muslim.
But they are, how do you call it? Not the case, but like they are the exception.
And there is some amusement to me that it's. I mean, the Semitic people, Jews included, were really bloodthirsty bastards. I mean, just read Exodus to see how they dealt with those who didn't, follow the same.
Yeah, Judaism was Jews and Judaism and Hebrews, ancient Hebrews and ancient Jews were extremely violent. If you're reading the Old Testament.
Yeah, and sorry, the thing that amuses me is that the Western values which were introduced to Israel by all of the Jews moving to Israel and taking Western values with them was what resulted in, Israel being less bloodthirsty than the Muslims that you're talking about and the Palestinians. It's just it's an imported idea, and you're basically saying this imported idea, it worked for the Jews, but it couldn't possibly work for the Arabs. Couldn't they get enough time and enough influence?
No, I see it going back. They went and asked. They did a poll, Pew poll. You can find it probably somewhere. if Palestinians support ISIS, and most of them do, regardless.
Yeah,
And I'm not talking about the
As I say, if you were born with a boot on your face, you are going to
come on.
You are going to feel that way.
No. I'm sorry. That's not the main factor. That's the problem that people, there are a lot of poor, sick, frustrated people in the United States today. Let's call them the black community. Okay, 15% of the population. They live in projects. They are poor. They have a very they live in a very bad areas with a lot of crime. They are not, they suffer.
Okay,
Yeah.
what analogy are you
But
getting?
they're not going to to bomb themselves. They're not going to pick up ammunition and fight the United States or the whites. They're not going to do that. Why don't they do that? Why don't poor people in Europe do?
Their situation is nothing like those who are living in like Gaza.
No, it's the same. It's the same situation of people who lived here in the West Bank in the 90s. It's the same situation, and in the 70s and the 80s, by the way. By the way, if we're going to recall history, until 67, Jordan ruled the West Bank. There was not one university in the West Bank. Since Israel took the area, more than 10 universities, a dozen universities were erected in the West Bank. People don't realize that. People don't know that now in the West Bank you can go as a tourist. Right now, you can go as a tourist over there. You cannot go to Gaza because Gaza is controlled by a crazy terrorist organization. But
I'm basically shrugging my shoulders just now. I've heard this argument before from others about the irrigation system in Israel created, an oasis out of a desert, and look at these filthy Arabs that couldn't do that. Why should we give land to them?
That's a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, more investment has happened because of Israel. Yeah,
but my point is that for decades you could have gone to also Gaza, but until now to the West Bank, visit there. A lot of Christian tourists go there because there are a lot of sites for Christians in the West Bank. They go there, they bring in cash, which the Palestinian Authority depends on very much. The Palestinian GDP depends on very much in the West Bank on tourism, mostly from Europe and America and such, and of course other Arab countries. My point is that it's not like they are growing in the ghetto in Germany 1940. It's not like that. You can go even into YouTube and Google visit Palestine, and you'll see how the Palestinian Authority is calling you to come in. They're showing you great hotels and restaurants and sites, and you can go everywhere and blah blah blah. And this is not just for show. You can actually do that, and millions of people go. Read the statistics. Millions of visitors come into the West Bank from other countries to be tourists, and then they see the whole area, and then they go to a specific area, which is a few kilometers long, and then you get a concrete wall erected, dividing between two areas. And you go, oh, why is this terrible thing? And they forget that these walls were not arbitrarily put there. These walls were put there because right now we have a road inside Israel that comes on the border with the West Bank, which is a high place, and Palestinians just sat on rooftops and with automatic machine guns and fire, and they're doing it until this day. They're firing on Israeli vehicles, snipers. That's why they put walls over there. It's not something which is, we are evil and want to hurt them or take over. And another an argument that I heard, which is so ridiculous, from people like Ryan Dawson, that crazy nut, is that Israel is destroying Palestinian homes to build their own cities on top of them. And what he's doing is mixing two facts together to make it sounds very terrible. What Israel is doing is going to a Palestinian person, a Palestinian terrorist's home, and just taking down that house. So you can look at the great city of Nablus, and you're bringing down only one house inside a huge area, and the settlements are way away from there. It's not like we are, bringing in tractors and plowing down cities and building cities on top of it.
But there have been forced seizure of land and properties.
Where?
You try to tell me that doesn't happen?
By Israel?
Well, individuals, yeah, Israelis.
You know how many settlements are being brought down every day by the Israeli government because they are illegal?
Not enough.
That's not the point. Israel is only building on areas that were not designated to anyone, not owned by anyone. And I don't approve of that, but this is the case. And then you get some rogues going and trying to take over. Okay, so what? You have criminals, so what?
Okay, I think we mostly agree on the whole settlement thing. Can I attack this?
But I want to stop this and say I'm very, very disappointed that we have so many people listening to this call, and this is also a fundraiser. I know we are mixing two different things here, which are not supposed to be mixed. But Red Celt is doing a fundraiser to get a puppy because unfortunately his old dog died, and all we need is to raise something like 400 pounds, which is not a lot, guys. I donated 10 pounds today. If you can donate a few pounds or a few dollars or shekels or whatever, we are trying to get 400 pounds here for expenses. So be kind. Yeah, and I've listened to a lecture by a guy who is a friend with a Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman, who said that happiness comes from donating, and that extends life. So to extend your life, donate. And I'm not kidding. Doing something, volunteering and helping other people triggers something chemical in your brain, which will take your levels of sugar down, your cholesterol down. It will make your immune system stronger. So keep on doing that. And please give a few shekels to old Red Celt to help him.
Call me old, please. I know I am, but come on.
Well, you can see in the fundraiser. The link is in the description box. By the way, go to the description box. Go and donate. We're watching. We're trying to see if we can manage to get a few people to donate. Even Sargon mentioned this fundraiser, and a few people gave something. So please, let's help the guy. I don't know him much. I just found him, talked to him on from YouTube because he used to watch my videos. Can I say about the page?
You could do, but hang on. You're saying that's the only way you know me? I did your bloody artwork, man.
That's later, yeah.
And
that came later. And Sargon's, that's true. That's true. And of course, I mentioned that when I got the new artwork, but we only know each other from the internet. It's not like he's my brother and we're doing the Nigerian sting on you right now, because we made a joke about that earlier. Still,
no, well, I did artwork for YouTubers I like to watch, which obviously Sargon and yourself, the two primary ones, and a few others I've done as freebies to help signal boost sort of small population YouTube channelers, the sort of anti-SJW type, that is.
And yeah, and this is one of your way of living, right? This is your living.
Trying to.
Okay.
Trying to carve a new career slowly.
So from a very nice looking puppy that we want to get for Red Celt, Moving back to Gaza. No, just kidding.
Could I approach this from a slightly different angle?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think there are things that we agree too much on, so let's take it this way. Right, I'm also a gamer, and playing on European servers, you'll often encounter Israelis on there. And sometimes you'll talk to them, sometimes the topic of Palestine comes up. And I've not met a nice Israeli yet, or one that does, let me rephrase that, one that doesn't think that Palestinians are, and I'm quoting them directly, subhuman. And there are members of even the Knesset who have been quoted saying similar things, saying that Palestinians are subhuman. And look, as an atheist,
Where?
I'm sorry, I don't have
maybe the far radical left-wing parties. You have Nazi parties in Europe, right?
Okay, but all right.
So that's not fair. It's not fair to say, well, I know that European governments are saying stuff like Jews are subhumans, but when you actually look at that, that's only like 1% of the government of the.
Okay. All right. Ignore what I said about the politicians, but human beings that have encountered sort of regular Israeli citizens here.
Okay, so that's very unfortunate, and
You're telling me. I mean,
I
do as an atheist. I don't care which non-existent god you pray. I don't care if Muslims and.
So let me try to defend my stupid co-Israelis. Okay.
But can I just make the point a bit more? Because this is one thing that pisses me off greatly, because if there's one nation in the world that should understand what it means to treat other people as subhuman, it should be fucking Israel. And to find Israelis, and I don't know how common it is, perhaps I was unlucky and found a select few, but I know it exists, and it just pisses me off. I mean, to think of them as subhuman, then yeah, you're going to get history repeats, and this is one country it shouldn't be repeating to.
Okay, so let me clarify a few things and say a few things. First thing, that's not a good comparison between what happened to the Jews and what the Jews are doing, or Israelis are doing, to Palestinians, and I'll tell you why. If you look at what Germans did to Jews, or what Europeans did to Jews, what Jews did back to Europeans was not what Palestinians are doing to Israelis. Had the Jews in Europe formed a Jew Hamas and fired missiles at German cities, and then Germany came in and bashed all the Jews, killed them all, I would say, well, they had it coming.
Okay, well, the word Jewish resistance parties in Poland and in other countries that were fighting back, so it wasn't as if everyone put their hands up and went off into the ghettos.
That's not a good comparison. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no. Well, every analogy is going to be flawed in one way, but you understand what.
But that's a very, very serious way. We are at war with the Palestinians. They are killing us as much as we are killing them more, but they are killing us.
A lot more, yes.
But so what? Who says that we need to kill one of them when they kill one of us? Where is that stupid law coming from?
It's not a law. I know it's a crazy idea, but there's this morality thing.
Well, if you want to discuss morality, then what is better, a short violent war or a very long, not so violent, but much more harmful?
The key phrase, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but it's to do with a just response.
Yeah, it was.
Some slaps in your face, you don't shoot them in the head. You perhaps slap them back.
I think it's called reasonable. Not reasonable measure. I can't remember the fucking name, but I know what you're talking about. I think everyone knows.
So it does matter that. I think was it.
I think that's what I seriously think that the IDF is responding with not overreacting. If that's the term, I don't know the term. Not excessive force to the situation. And a lot of Western countries, they bash us and they criticize us, but they're not in our position. They don't have 1 million people all devoted to kill every one of you, firing missiles at London, at
for me, if you
cities, right?
if Israel had been better neighbors, do you think this animosity would be as intense as it is?
Israel was a better neighbor.
No.
That's my point, and it doesn't matter. That's my point. It doesn't matter. If by tomorrow Israel would withdraw from all the territories, from all the occupied territories, go back to the behind the green line, remove all the army, what do you think would happen? Do you think they'll go, okay, well, they did us, a favor, or they were good neighbors. Let's relax now.
It's part
Never,
of it's part of another process. That's
but
not the whole thing.
But they have to join in that process. They cannot go and become more and more militant, killing us more and more and more, and we'll just sit and well, it's a phase. Let's wait. Okay. They're becoming bigger and bigger, and they're getting more and more missiles and rockets and ammunition in.
No, Hamas would lose their influence. You know why
they would not lose their influence, because
you know why people are voting and sort of like supporting Hamas just now? Because they get things done.
No, because they don't have a fucking choice. They cannot vote in a different government now.
But they're building
no elections in Gaza.
It's Hamas that are building these tunnels which are bringing goods into Gaza, that Israel is sort of clamping down on what is allowed and not allowed to come in.
Wait. So let's put that.
If they're controlling the resources,
that's a good. Let's dwell on that for a second, okay? Let's dwell on that for a second. Just a second. Let's take it down a notch and dwell on this. People in Gaza today don't have any power over their own destiny.
They also don't have any power.
No. Listen. Very good. Listen very well. Let me finish my point. If they by tomorrow decide to remove Hamas, they wouldn't be able to do that, and they wouldn't even make a peep trying to do that, because they are scared shitless. You say something wrong, you'll be executed in the street. You have many examples videotaped on YouTube of people dragged through the streets, shot, have their legs broken in the middle of the streets for everyone to see. The moment they are saying something, even not against Hamas, the moment they are doing anything against Sharia law, okay? If you are turning on music in a wedding, the Hamas will come in and break down and start shooting people, or taking people into prison. They are living right now in a sort of an ISIS-like regime. There's no elections in Gaza. There haven't been elections since Hamas went into power. And they have no control over their own, you can call it mini state. Let's take the Gaza Strip. There is no Israeli there's no Israeli army in that area. Hamas is controlling the entire Gaza Strip behind the border. You can call it a state, the state of Gaza.
Yeah, but
do you really think?
I can't see into the future. But if you've got one body which is controlling goods that are coming in and who can get them and who can't, they're going to stay in power, and that power is going to be diminished if that supply route is cut off, and Gaza becomes more open to the rest of the world. I'm not saying it'll go away overnight. You open the borders. So yeah.
You open the borders. Hamas will still be the only ones who control the borders and decide what comes in. They'll take everything, and they'll distribute everything. They're a totalitarian regime. If Israel, you remove the blockade. So what? What happens then? You think that anything would change? Nothing would change. They'll just get more weapons. That's it. And Israel is sending thousands of trucks all the time into Gaza, bringing them food and medicine and all the supplies and electricity and water. Israel is funding electricity. They're not paying their electricity bill, but we are giving them free electricity for 1.5 million people.
Okay.
I'm paying for that electricity from my from my tax dollar.
Do you know how much electricity they actually get?
How much what?
Do you know how much electricity they actually get? You've got
Well,
people
they're getting whatever they're getting it for free.
Okay,
and they're getting enough.
Forget
And
whether
they're
or not
getting enough, believe me.
it's free. You've got people whose job it is to go around turning electricity off of businesses, sort of, because they're on quota, because there isn't enough to go around. In 2008 and in 2012, the attacks on Gaza, first thing Israel did was they knocked out the only power plant that's actually in Gaza.
That's how you conduct war. You don't conduct war by being
so
nice.
Civilians, you understand the difference between civilians and combatants, don't you?
How? No. No, but the problem is in Gaza, the civilians are the combatants. This is something that people don't get. You don't have like military, Gaza, the Hamas army and Hamas bases and a battle zone. Hamas makes the civilians combatants. Hamas makes the city a battle zone. Hamas makes the city a base. Gaza is a military base. Gaza is a war zone. It's very unfortunate that you have citizens over there, but that's Hamas's doing. They could,
Hamas didn't put them there.
No, but Hamas brought their bases into Gaza, into the cities inside Gaza. Let's just make people understand. The Gaza Strip is an area, 25 kilometer long, and you have something like 10 cities in the Gaza Strip. Okay,
very small area.
Yeah, but still you have something like 10 small cities in that area, and most of them are very condensed. So there are there is a lot of territory in the strip which is unpopulated. You could have said Hamas could have put their military bases over there. They decide to put the military base in the middle of Gaza.
What would have happened? What would have happened 5 minutes after they put themselves in a sort of isolated area?
But is it my fault?
Boom!
But is it my fault? Is it the Israeli fault? The Israeli fault that they are deciding to use their own citizens as cannon fodder?
What choice do they have? If they set themselves up in an isolated space,
they can go a peaceful way. They can decide to go and make peace, right? They don't have to fire rockets at Israel.
Yeah, to be very clear, I'm not pro-Hamas in any way.
No, but that's a good point. No, I like the way you're arguing, but this is very good. You're now counter-arguing my points. That's very good.
Yeah, it's the disparity between the two forces.
But you're thinking in an unrealistic way. You need to resolve a situation. You have a terrorist organization which has a military by now, because they are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of combatants in Gaza. They have small weapons. They have medium-sized weapons. They have like anti-tank missiles.
Okay, so what you're doing?
They have missiles, and people say that's not missiles; they're rockets. Go Google. A missile is a type of a rocket. A rocket is a type of missile. So it's the same thing.
Cartouches. It's basically a glorified firework, isn't it?
No, if it can take down a building, it's not.
If it gets very fucking lucky, there's no guidance system.
It doesn't really matter. Once you fire
in a general direction and you fire it off, and the Iron Dome will get most of them anyway.
Let me ask you this: if I'll fire now 10,000 missiles with no guidance system into London, main, the middle of London, would you say, it's fireworks? No. If I'm doing it from a city adjacent to Britain, you'll fuck the shit out of that city. You'll bump the hell out of that city.
Have you seen photos of the aftermath of Gaza? Have you seen what was done to those cities?
That's after 3 rounds.
And you compare that to these rockets.
I'm not comparing it. Look at Hiroshima. Can you compare it to what Japan did to the United States? But you needed to do that.
But that's where the problem is for me. Is the disparity between. It's like people.
But that's not how you conduct war, man. Listen, the problem is, you need to, if you want to do minimal damage, you need to do, to do it, without dragging it into years of fighting and killing and fighting and killing, never-ending cycle. You need to be, going. I think there is a beautiful. Someone find the link to that bit from the White House, that TV show. with I think Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen, one of
You
them.
mean The West Wing?
Probably one of them, where one of the Sheens was the president of the United States, and he's in the Pentagon, and they're talking, and he's giving a great speech about how stupid it is to retaliate with the same measure, with the same, in the same way. Because if someone is doing something to you and you retaliate in the same way, you're going to do that forever. Nothing's going to change.
Not true.
But true, very true. And if you're going to decisively going to win a war and stop hostilities at that moment, you're going to do that with the destructive force. That's the only way. That's why the Allies destroyed Germany.
So the Palestinian people who aren't firing rockets, they just don't matter, basically.
Look, no, they matter. But if you want to help them,
no.
Look, you need to realize.
If you've got 100 to 1 fatality rate, I mean, it was roughly 13 Israelis killed and 1,300 Palestinians killed. This is 2008 and 9. Shit, I lost track of what I was going to say.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Answer this question. What is better?
Sorry, no. What I was getting to. Sorry to interrupt.
What is better, the trench wars of the First World War, or the Hiroshima and the destruction of Germany, Second World War? Which one is a better situation? I'm telling you, the Hiroshima and the destruction of Germany. Millions, hundreds of thousands and millions of people died. But because the war was won decisively, the United Nations and the United States came into Japan and came into Germany, put in a normal government in place. And they held in, and they stayed there with military forces to make sure nothing happens. They got out, and everything is peaceful. Look at Japan today. Look at Germany today. Germany is the #1 country in Europe, and Japan is the #1 country in the Far East.
Well, that's debatable. Their economy hasn't been that great.
Well, but it's something close. Okay, but
I understand exactly what you're saying.
So if we're going to turn the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, into a trench war, which is what we have right now, every round we have with Gaza is a sort of a trench war. No one moves an inch. Nothing really happens. Nothing changes, and you got another round, and people are dying for nothing. But if the Israeli government was able, and it's not able because of political correctness, believe me, this is the reason. If the rest of the world didn't mind, Israel would go into Gaza by force, destroy a lot of Gaza, but would remove Hamas and establish a local government, stay there with military force for a lot of years to make sure that no terrorist organizations, no fanatic groups would get hold of the area. After 10, 20, 30 years, you can withdraw, and the place would be different. We are right now in a trench war with Gaza. And we will have another, I promise you, we're going to have another round, and another round, and another round. And nothing will change after all these rounds. And right now, Hamas is taking the concrete that we are giving them, taking your tax dollars. Well, no, you're not paying taxes. You're poor. But
even if we were, I'm not an American, so my tax money wouldn't be going to pay for it anyway.
Guys, come on. We're doing a fundraiser. Give $1, please. We have almost 100 people listening. Everyone just give $1 measly to the fundraiser campaign, link in the description box. Come on, guys.
I'm not being nice enough, am I?
No, you're fine, man. So where were we? So Hamas is taking. I'll just reiterate. Hamas is taking the concrete that we're giving them, and your tax dollars, and my tax shekels, and your tax Great British pounds, I guess, and they are using it to build more tunnels to Israel to kill Israelis.
That's not the only reason the tunnels are built.
The tunnels they were built. The reason Israel went into Gaza the last time, they destroyed 35 tunnels into Israel.
Yeah, and what do you think those tunnels? If all those tunnels have been used for to kill Israelis, that were 35 tunnels. How many Israelis were dying?
They didn't manage to finish the job. We got there before they did. What happened is people
because they were built to get goods in and out. That's what they were built for primarily.
They're not building tunnels into Israel, into adjacent cities in Israel, adjacent to the Gaza Strip, to smuggle food.
Well, I said goods, not necessarily food.
Any kind of goods. The only thing they are building these tunnels, and I guess that one day we'll see Hamas soldiers popping out of a tunnel in the middle of a kibbutz or a settlement inside Israel, which is adjacent to the Gaza Strip, and they're going to slaughter a lot of people.
But they didn't manage to do that already when they had 35 tunnels.
They didn't finish the job.
See, this is where I'd like to draw another comparison with Nazi Germany, is that the tunnels that were built out of the Warsaw Ghetto, were they terror tunnels as well?
It's not, no, because
they didn't manage to do that already.
But Jews were not terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Come on, are you serious when you're comparing that?
Comparison with Nazi Germany is that the tunnels that were built. My voice is repeating. I can hear myself coming back. They terror tunnels as well.
It's not. No,
tech problems. Managed to do that already.
But Jews were not terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Come on, are you serious when you're comparing that?
Comparison with Nazi Germany is that the tunnels that were built. My voice is repeating. I can hear myself coming back. They terror tunnels. Well.
It's not. No, is that you? Can you? But Jews were not terrorists. You're just repeating me screaming.
Comparison with Nazi Germany is that the tunnels that were built. My voice.
I think it's Ed. Ed, you are. It's not. You are in the conversation, and you are. Jews were not terrorists. You're just repeating. I'm going to mute Ed, and we can continue talking.
The tunnels.
I think it's Ed. I'm going. Bye. Okay, continue.
That was horrible hearing my own voice come back.
Yeah,
and yours actually.
Enjoyed the call, and he just did that on purpose, I guess.
What do you think, Zionist or non-Zionist?
I don't know, but I don't care. He was polluting the talk, so had to eject him.
I've forgotten what I was talking about. Oh yeah, we were.
So don't compare the tunnels.
Why not? Why not? You had an enclosed group who couldn't.
Because they did it because they needed supplies. They don't need supplies.
Yes, they do.
No,
they do. Yes, they do.
And come on, do you think Hamas is building? Hamas, not random civilians in Palestinian civilians. Hamas is building tunnels, and they are saying we are going to use these tunnels to kill Israelis. These are military tunnels. They are saying, Hamas leaders. They are saying it.
I'm not saying that isn't something that they could also do. I'm not saying that they're primarily for goods, but that is also what they were used for.
They cannot smuggle one piece of gum if they'll build a tunnel into Israel. Because we have the capability to realize where these tunnels are coming out from. If we'll find them, we'll destroy them.
So why did you find 35 all at the same time if you know how to find them?
I don't understand the question. How we did that? We went into Gaza, and we had intelligence, and we had people ratting in because they build tunnels. The entry point usually is inside someone's home.
Have you seen a movie called Tears of Gaza?
No.
Okay. It's filming as a documentary has been made of just the regular people of Gaza, just when the 2008 combat started, I should say, and they're just interviewing regular Gazans who mentioned
Stop. We got £10, a £10 donation. Thank you guys for who donated. I don't know. Someone donated. Very well done. Thank you. You are like the only how do you call it righteous man in in Sodom. That's a saying.
The only one not into anal sex, is that what you're trying to tell me?
That's saying in Hebrew. The only righteous man in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay. So as compliments go, it's not very high, but okay.
Well, Lot, it saved his life.
But no, sorry, to go back to, it's worth watching. It's not a hugely anti-Israeli movie. I'm sure you could watch it from start to end with no problems. But it's regular people, and they mention the tunnels as places where I think was someone trying to make a wedding dress, and she didn't have enough material, but she could get it via Hamas through the tunnels.
Well, the tunnels that go into Egypt are that kind of tunnels. The tunnels that go into Egypt serve many purposes. Many of them to get supplies. This is true. Now that the Egyptians are now fighting against tunnels because they realize that they are smuggling weapons into the Gaza, and the Egyptians don't want, and they are, joining hand in hand with ISIS that is now establishing itself in the Sinai Peninsula. So the Egyptians on their side of the border, because there's a border on that side, they close the border as well. You can blame Israel for the blockade, but Egypt is having like 50% of that blockade. They're doing that. They have closed the border, and they are flooding the tunnels, killing people, everyone who is working to make them. So, but they are doing it for good reasons. They're not just doing it for fun. It causes a lot of problems. Believe me, I wish we could open the blockade around Gaza and let everyone come in and out as they wished. But I know that once we are going to do that, we are going to see a lot more of much more advanced weapons, because people don't get it. Iran is doing a proxy war here. That's why Israel and Iran are in such a bad place, because Iran is sending weapons, very advanced weapons, to Hezbollah, by the way. Very, very advanced weapons. I'm talking about M300 anti-aircraft missiles. This is something that can take down Israeli airplanes. And they can send that to Gaza, and Israel has managed to confiscate many ships that went into Gaza, and there were a lot of advanced weapons over there, including missiles with guidance.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad actors involved.
So we don't want that.
Sides.
That's the reason for the blockade. The only reason for the blockade is to prevent Gaza from getting serious weapons.
Yeah, but there are other things are blocked. I don't know all the details, so I'm not going to sort of spout figures or anything. But there are things other than.
I suggest that you go.
Material.
I suggested you go to the Israeli-Gaza border and see how many trucks go into Gaza every day, with every kind of supply you can think of. There are hospitals in Gaza that are operating right now, and there are news reports in Gaza, news stations in Gaza from all over the world. They stay in nice hotels, they eat nice dinners. It's not a concentration camp like people would think it.
Yeah, I didn't use that word, but it's certainly an enclosed area which is heavily controlled as to what can and can't go in there. Hello, you still there? Oh, have we lost him? Okay, I can't see the chat, so I've got no idea what's going on. Okay, well, one Jew down. I'm not going to do a solo show. Oh, okay, tech issues. Okay. Well, keep on talking. I can't do a solo run here. Talk about the dog. Now, this whole GoFundMe, I'm not used to asking for help. I'm not the charity sort of person.
Hello.
On the asking side, that is. So it's it's all very uncomfortable having to ask other people for help.
Okay, I'll ask. Help him.
My genes. Sorry.
Help him, guys. Help him.
Welcome back.
Thank you. My mic died.
Okay.
So where were we?
Well, I just the reason that I have the position I have about the whole Israel-Palestine thing is personal. It's not to do with groups. I'm no fan of Islam, a lifelong atheist. I mean, if we're all in hijacked, I would be killed before you would. I mean, the non-believer. Oh, you could just say you're a Jew, but if you said you're an atheist as well, you'd probably go before me, to be honest. But I'm no fan of Arabs, Palestinians, Islam, Muslim. It's just people being treated as subhuman. It just really pisses me off.
That's an unfortunate consequence of the situation. And people, believe me, if it was up to me, and a lot up to the majority of Israelis are now frustrated. They are vengeful. They have suffered a lot from Palestinian terrorism, and they open their hand and they how do you call it, like show their hand, like gave their hand to the Palestinians and tried to make peace for many times, and every time we got beaten very badly, and many people died. You don't know what it is. Well, it's funny because now we probably know, but to open the news in the middle of the day in a street that you went through many times, in a bus that you took, a bus line that you ridden on, how do you call it, you traveled with many times, and see it being exploded. It was bombed during the time you are sitting down and discussing peace with the Palestinians, during the time you are giving back land, and you see a bomb going off in a bus in the middle of Tel Aviv, and you see hundreds of people injured and dozens dead, and this is a bus that you used to ride, and you think maybe this is an isolated incident, and a week later the same thing happens again at the same bus, not the very same bus, but the same line, at the very same place, again and again and again. And you're thinking, fuck that shit, I'm not giving anything back. And this didn't happen in a day or a week or a year. This is a long-term process, and now Israelis are completely frustrated. They don't think, and I don't believe, Palestinians really wish to sign a peace agreement with Israel and establish a two-state solution. I think that their strategy is to wait. They don't have to give anything away, and they ask for everything.
Yeah,
that's their strategy. That's if you look at everything that happens on the ground, that's everything points to that direction. They are thinking, we are not going to give anything. No one will ask us to give anything.
When you describe people sort of blowing themselves up or sort of doing acts of terror against Israelis,
firing missiles, yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about two disparately armed groups. That if you don't have a fighter jet and the best you can do is to blow yourself up, then
no. Yeah, why would you do that? Why would you do that if you are?
Say no, but that's the reality of it.
No, that's not the reality. Why would
what's happening?
If the British government and the NRA would sit down to discuss.
You mean the IRA? You're talking about Ireland.
The IRA. Sorry, would sit down to discuss a solution, and the British government would start to withdraw away from Ireland, remove itself from Ireland, and at that time the IRA, not some crazy nutter, the IRA would send suicide bombers to kill Londoners in the middle of London. Would then the government in London, and I'm talking about not doing it for a month or 6 months. I'm talking about years. And then the IRA, after the British government would remove itself from 80% of the area from Ireland, the occupied area from Ireland. The IRA would be big enough and strong enough to start a whole-scale war and fire missiles on England. Forget that it's not doing any damage or minimal damage. What would the British government do? They would just say, "Oh, it's our fault," and then they'll remove another, and they'll withdraw more. And when that happens, it only escalates the violence, because that's what happened when Israel withdrew from Gaza. When Israel withdrew from Gaza, Gaza was controlled by the Palestinian Authority, which was not that violent. But then Hamas took over because there was no Israeli military forces over there. They just took over. They shot and killed and threw away the Palestinian Authority and all their leaders from Gaza, took over by force, and became a terrorist mini-state. That's why you don't see air raids on the West Bank. That's why you don't see tanks going into the West Bank. Because the West Bank is not a unified terrorist organization that declared war on Israel. It's simple as that.
I also wouldn't want to live there either.
Well, unfortunately, that's the case, but that's not the
they are well behaved, but people in the West Bank are basically under the Israeli boot still. It's not as if they're free to do what they want.
Well, they are free to do what they want inside their territory. They can go in and out. They're not under siege, right? And 80% or 85% is controlled by the Palestinian Authority, which means the Palestinian Authority is in control there. They have a Palestinian passport, and they can go and visit your country and come in with a Palestinian passport, travel for a bit, go back home. And right now, real estate in the West Bank, where the Palestinians are living, is skyrocketing in terms of prices.
So, can I ask you a question about democratic process? You said there are the Arab parties in Israel. Mm-hmm. Presumably, there's legally Arabs couldn't sort of become the ruling party in Israel.
No, there's no such law. There are a few parties in Israel which would want to establish such a law, and they try to do that every time the law it fails. It cannot even.
I understood Palestinians weren't allowed to vote in Israeli elections.
Well, we have 25% of Israeli citizens are Arabs. Used to be Palestinians before they were renamed Israelis, right? Because before Israel was here, the Arabs that lived in Jaffa and the Arabs that lived in Taibe, Tira, Ramle, and many other cities in Israel were called Palestinians. Now they got an Israeli citizenship. They are called Israelis. They are voting in for Arab parties. And right now we have like 10% of the House of Commons in Israel, the Knesset, is Arab parties with Arab MPs. And you had Muslim Arab ministers. You had Arabs as military officers, army officers, Supreme Court judges. I don't know what the fuck is about. They're talking about when they're talking about apartheid. In the state of Israel, a Palestinian has all the rights, the legal rights, that an Israeli has. Not one, and less duties maybe, because they are not drafted into the military service. They can do it voluntarily.
Okay, I'm running out of things.
So that's the point on apartheid. If you want to talk about that,
no, not really. I mean, it's one short interview with Jimmy Carter, and yeah, I mean,
I don't know what people are talking about when they say apartheid. They are talking about the area under dispute, which has some Israeli presence over there and some Palestinian Authority presence over there, and the people in the middle are still living in an area under dispute. So they suffer from this, let's call it temporal case, which temporal means that it can last for many years, but it's still supposed to be a temporal case. If we were to finalize a peace agreement and have a two-state solution, they would become citizens of one state or another and would receive all the rights of one state or the minimal rights of Palestinians. Because believe me, if Israel would cease to exist and the Palestinian Authority and Hamas would just take over the entire area, it will turn into Syria very quickly, and all the poor Palestinians that you're talking about in Gaza would be dead.
At least to be dead at their own hands.
Oh, come on. That's a very, very, if you're talking about morality.
No, I'm talking about personal liberty, and they don't have a lot just now.
They won't get any liberty if they are not getting any liberty when they are controlled by their own. That's my point. Gaza is a great example for that. They have zero liberty in Gaza. Gaza used to be a secular area. Now it's Sharia law. It's ISIS with a different face.
Okay.
And they're abusing their own, killing their own, maiming, putting them in jail.
As I say, I'm no fan of Hamas. It's the individuals that concern me more and how they're treated.
You want to help them, you take down Hamas. If the world wants to help the Palestinians in Gaza,
you can't really kill an idea. You can kill individuals.
No. If you could take down the Nazi regime, if you could take down the Ceausescu regime in Romania, you can take down Hamas.
Okay,
it's not like
you can take down the power, but not kill the idea. Is basically what you're saying.
What is the idea? What is the idea?
Oh, we're talking about Islamists, aren't we?
Yeah. So we're going back to the cultural thing. It's not about being poor or rich. It's a state of mind that you're born with in your culture.
Yeah, well, you're not born with it. If it's cultural, then you're not born with it, are you?
If they would not do terror attacks because of Jews in the Middle East, they would do it for the same reasons they are doing it in Brussels. They would do it anyway, which is my point. Why it's better to have right now Israeli presence in the West Bank to prevent the West Bank from deteriorating into Syria.
So more of the same, in other words.
It's an unfortunate reality.
Wouldn't it have been wonderful if Israel was actually set up somewhere like Ethiopia instead?
Yeah, it wouldn't be wonderful if Muslims were a pacifist nation.
Yeah.
A pacifist culture. But we're not living in Fantasyland.
Yeah, but just can you imagine, Israel is such a new country, and if only it had been somewhere other than there.
No, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. I don't accept that.
As a non-religious person, why? Why does that bit of line...
It's not a religious thing. I love this place. It's a good place.
That's not very rational. I love this place, therefore we should own it.
No, because
Arabs can fuck off.
We got it by right.
By conquest.
Nope. Buying land is not conquest.
The whole state wasn't created by buying land.
It was created by the United Nations.
Which wasn't buying land, so it's...
It didn't buy land, but it removed the previous power in place. You can say that about any country on the planet, right?
I know.
Eventually, at one point in history, it was taken away, even if it was just a small tribe of 50 people. Taken by conquest. And from that point on, it became a state.
And I mean, there are more Jews in the USA than there are in Israel. I mean, couldn't that be the promised land instead?
What? There are more Jews where?
In the USA than there are in Israel, aren't there? I'm sure there are.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure there are.
There are 7 million Jews in Israel. There are like 20 million Jews all over the world. I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure I saw that recently. I'd have to Google it to check.
But so what? They are not Israelis.
I know. I'm just.
And a
I'm just
quarter
sort of wishing.
of Israelis are Arabs. Some of
I'm,
them are Christian and some of them are Muslims.
I just wish that it had gone slightly differently. I mean, as I say, I could sort of be described as a Zionist in that I completely get the historical reasons for the phrase "never again." You know, this isn't going to happen again. We're going to have our own homeland. We're not going to be anybody sort of like go to Fallout guy if we want to blame the world's ills on somebody, which is what's happened to Jews their entire history almost. So I totally get that. It's just such a pity that it happened to be that
more
part
than
of the
that,
world.
I know that's unfortunate. But even more than that, I had a discussion with Eric Blair about multiculturalism, and it came down to I'm saying something like, I think that ethnic groups or historically nations with a history and an ancestry having their own state is a good thing, is a very good thing. And multiculturalism is not going to work. We're not going to become a huge gray one nation state of the planet Earth. People are always dividing into groups. It's our nature. And when we are, and it's not saying that we need to fight each other. It's not like nationalism in the sense that, you know, other nations are inferior, they need to suffer, or we need to take over. We can just respect each other and be kind to each other, but still be with our own, because that's the most stable state.
Well, you say it's human nature, but lots of things are human nature that we've outgrown over the years.
No, we haven't outgrown anything. Think about it.
Well, we used to be into cockfighting and bear baiting and all this sort of shit. And
We are
slavery was quite popular for a while.
We are still into it, only that we have laws against it now.
Okay.
Cockfights still happen.
For yourself. Yeah, I know they do in some countries, but
yeah. So maybe, yeah, the cultures changed. That's true. The cultures have changed, but the human nature wasn't. Never changed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no historian, but I'm familiar with history. It's an interest, and I'm well aware. It's not just the whole Nazi thing, but just the way Jews have been treated over the years. It's just
shit. In one word.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's constantly the good with money, basically, and they found a niche wherever they were, in whichever little ghettos in cities around Europe, especially. I mean, they were good money lenders, and people went to them to help them out. And if the option came along to basically kill the person you owe money to, or get them to leave your country, then yeah, why not do that?
Yeah.
Pogrom after pogrom, the Jews have been blamed for one thing or the other for most of their lifetimes. So I totally understand the never again attitude after World War II. I completely get that and totally agree with that. As I say, it's just a shame it's that part of the world.
So let's try to end this conversation, because we passed the 2-hour mark, and I want to stop here. Although,
can I summarize what's just saying there? It's irritating for me to be called anti-Semitic if I am anti-Israel. It's the state of Israel and its behavior is what I'm against. I'm absolutely not against Jewish people at all. And it annoys me when people speak out against Israel called anti-Semitic, and you've done it yourself. You've done it yourself.
No, but there are people who are anti-Semitic and
perhaps they are as well. Yes, but it's not necessarily this.
No, it's not necessarily, and I agree with you completely. There is, and I'm saying it all the time, there is valid criticism of Israel, which I may agree with or not, but still it's a valid criticism. And I can, believe me, Israelis and myself can spot the difference between someone who is really harsh critic of Israel and someone who is anti-Semitic.
Does it involve swastikas by any chance?
Well, you can see that when they are criticizing Israel, at the same time they are dismissing completely any regards to Jews and Israelis. They say fuck them. You know, it's like they're saying in other words, they say fuck them. They can all die. We don't give a shit. And all the Jews that support them in our country, in the United States, fuck them. They can all die. So it's like the difference between someone who criticizes, I don't know, even anti-feminists or feminists, and say, I'm criticizing feminists, or fuck all women, kill them all, right? You can spot the difference, and you can find out who is really anti-feminist and a misogynist, and who is just a critic of feminists, and vice versa. And vice versa, by the way.
Yeah, there
are a lot of feminists who are not misandric, but there are feminists who are misandric. You can spot them.
There's a Facebook group called Anti-Feminism, I think it's called. I joined it, and it's just like so much hatred of women. I didn't see any anti-feminism. It's just anti-woman. I thought, no, I'm not with you on this one.
Exactly. So yeah, you can spot that. You can spot that when you see someone like even Peter Tatchell, who is a BDS campaigner.
Yeah.
You can see that this guy doesn't hate Jews, right? But you can see that George Galloway doesn't give a fuck about Jews.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to commit myself to knowing any of his actual opinions. He's such
That's my opinion.
Twisty. Yeah, no, you're probably right. He is such a weaselly human being.
So yeah, so that's the difference. Both of them are pro BDS. Both of them are against. You know, they are very strong pro Palestinians, and there's a huge difference in the narrative. They sound the same, almost the same, but there's a huge difference. You can just see that. And I want to say that if we are trying to help the Palestinians, let's end this conversation with a thought about how to help Palestinians. My argument is, the best way to do that is to, by force, remove Hamas from Gaza. By any force necessary.
So regime change.
Completely. And if it takes a whole-out war that would kill many people, as an unfortunate thing, and I don't want even one, that's a necessary evil. I don't wish for one Palestinian child or innocent man to die. But I know that to help them as a whole, you need to remove that organization from that area, and you need to establish an organization, a strong organization with an army inside the West Bank, form the state, you know, remove all the settlements, do the deal that Olmert suggested in 2005 to 2006. You cannot remove the big cities. There's a huge chunk. There's a huge city called Ariel right in the middle, in the border between Israel and the West Bank, and you cannot remove that, but you can give territories in exchange of that territory.
Yeah, I think a large city like that, I think that would be acceptable if all of these sort of like the pockmarked areas sort of scattered across the whole of the West Bank.
So you can. So there are big cities, like 2 or 3, on the border or somewhere, and you can give land in exchange for that land, and settle down, create a very strong, controlled government that would be very tight on security, that would educate Palestinians not to think that they're going to conquer Israel in the mindset of an ISIS, of an Islamic manner. Wait a few decades. Let things cool down, relax. You know.
Cool down, relax.
Yeah, and
they're really big.
And not remove the kebab, but remove the fanatics by force if necessary. And I'm talking about, you know, not being apologetic at all, doing it like 1945 style. Zero apologies, zero political correctness. If you're a fanatic, we're going to fucking shoot you or throw you behind, you know, the border to ISIS, send you to ISIS. And good luck with that. Keep only the rational ones in, and wait until they are self-sufficient and they have established themselves well enough to not to go back into the old ways. That's when you will help Palestinians. That's the only light in the end of the tunnel for the Palestinians.
Can I offer my final thought then?
Yes.
I think for a long time I thought that the ideal solution is obviously a two-state solution, and not. I can't see it working with everyone together in the same state. But with Jerusalem as an independent city-state, a bit like the Vatican, so that it belongs to neither side, because that was always one of the biggest sticking points of previous arguments about the two-state solution was Jerusalem.
That's a pipe dream.
Maybe, but
never gonna happen.
To me, that would be the closest way of coming to any idea of peace in the area.
No. Remove the fanatics.
Perhaps, yeah, I'll do that at the same time. I'm not saying don't do that.
The point is that Jerusalem, no one wants that solution. Not the Jews and not the Arabs and not the Christians. No one wants that solution.
Well, they all want the city for themselves. It's an important city, and they all want it for themselves. So
yeah, so you won't have a Palestinian state and then a Jerusalem state. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I would say nobody could. If you can't agree with amongst yourselves, none of you can have it. So it's like becoming an independent city.
But that's a very small issue.
Not in the past. In my lifetime, sort of witnessing all of this, the biggest headache has been the issue of Jerusalem.
It's not about Jerusalem. Not for the Jews and not for the Arabs.
Always, maybe not now, but in the past, it was always the biggest sticking point was Jerusalem's ownership.
I think it's a red herring. The Jerusalem thing that the Israeli government and the Palestinian government are using all the time. It's not about Jerusalem.
Well, kind
if
of.
Jerusalem was the problem. The problem would have been solved by now.
What do you think? You'd be fine if the Wailing Wall was in Palestine? Then do you think that'd be okay? Or the Al-Aqsa Mosque was in Israel?
They can have the Al-Aqsa Mosque. No problem. East Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall is not exactly East Jerusalem, but the current East Jerusalem.
Yeah, no.
When Olmert gave his deal to the Mahmoud Abbas, he offered Eastern Jerusalem, giving it back to the Palestinian Authority. That was not the problem, believe me.
Okay.
So on that note, we're going to end this fundraiser campaign that managed to raise only £10. And I hope if people are listening offline, they'll be kind enough to donate $1, $2, $3, $5, what you can. We are just trying to raise now something like 400 pounds, which is not a lot of money. So we can reach that goal, and help the man get a dog. Seriously, I know you think it's not a worthy cause, but it is. It is. So thank you very much. Thank you, Red Celt. And
thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
This chat, I've been threatening it for a while, so thank you.
My pleasure. Good night, everyone.